Subscribe to stay updated for the full story and never miss an episode. The city was alive with the hum of neon lights and the faint echo of sirens in the distance. Amelia had just finished sorting through the boss's emails when her phone buzzed, a subtle vibration against the mahogany desk. She glanced at the screen, expecting a mundane message from her friend, but froze when she saw the sender, an unknown number. Curiosity nudged her thumb, and she opened it. The words made her blood run cold. "I know what you're hiding." She looked around the empty office, her heart hammering. The Mafia boss, Dominic Rinaldi, was known for his ruthlessness, his temper legendary in the underground circles of New York. Yet, in the moments she spent with him daily, she saw another side, a calm, almost protective presence that masked the chaos of his empire. She had grown used to it, trusted it even, but this message unsettled everything. Dominic entered the room without a sound, his tailored suit impeccable, his dark eyes scanning the office until they locked on hers. There was a flicker in his gaze, a mix of curiosity and something far more dangerous. "Amelia," he said, his voice low, commanding, yet eerily calm. "Is there something you need to tell me?" Her fingers tightened around her phone. I don't know what this is, sir," she stammered, trying to hide the trembling that had betrayed her. He stepped closer, and the scent of expensive cologne filled her senses, sharp and intoxicating. Dominic was taller than she remembered, or maybe it was the intensity in his gaze that made her feel smaller. "Let me see your phone," he demanded, and though his tone was controlled, there was an edge that made it clear refusal was not an option. Amelia hesitated. This was dangerous. She knew what could happen if she didn't comply, but there was also the question of trust, and the thought of exposing her secrets to a man who ruled the city's underworld made her stomach twist in knots. Finally, with a reluctant hand, she slid the phone across the polished desk. Dominic's fingers brushed hers as he picked it up, and a shock ran through her, a mix of fear and something she couldn't name. He unlocked the screen, and the messages spilled out, harmless at first glance, casual notes, reminders, texts from friends. But then his eyes darkened as he scrolled further, landing on a string of messages between her and someone Dominic clearly didn't recognize or trust. For a moment, he didn't speak. Amelia held her breath, hoping the panic twisting inside her would remain hidden. Then, slowly, Dominic's hand clenched around the phone, and his jaw tightened. "Amelia," he said, voice low, almost a growl. "You've been hiding things from me." She opened her mouth to respond, but no words came. Fear, confusion, and an undeniable thrill coiled inside her, making her pulse spike. Dominic leaned closer, his presence overwhelming, the air between them charged. "I need you to be honest," he said, his tone shifting from anger to something darker, more personal. "Now." Amelia swallowed hard. Every instinct screamed to run, yet her body betrayed her, rooted to the spot. There was no escaping him, not here, not in this room where secrets seemed to weigh heavier than the world outside. And for the first time, she wondered if Dominic's interest in her went far beyond the professional, beyond the walls of the office she had thought were safe. The phone buzzed again, and both of them looked at it. Another message, from the same unknown number: "He's watching. Be careful." Dominic's eyes narrowed, dark and dangerous. "Careful," he repeated. "Amelia, do you understand what you've just done?" Her voice was barely a whisper. I didn't mean." He cut her off with a look that silenced her completely. The room seemed smaller, the shadows longer, and in that moment, Amelia realized that her life, and the life she thought she controlled, was about to change forever. Amelia's hands were trembling as she watched Dominic stare at the messages on her phone, his dark eyes scanning every line as if trying to read her soul. She wanted to explain, to tell him it was nothing, just harmless conversations with friends, but the words stuck in her throat. Dominic was dangerous, not just the rumors everyone whispered in hushed tones, but dangerous in a way that made the air around him feel charged, almost alive. His presence filled the room, heavy and undeniable, and Amelia felt a strange mixture of fear and something else, something she wasn't ready to name. Finally, Dominic set the phone down, the sharp click of it hitting the desk echoing like a gavel in the silent office. He didn't speak for a moment, just stared at her, the muscles in his jaw working as though restraining some unspoken fury. Amelia swallowed hard, every nerve in her body alert. Amelia, he said finally, his voice deceptively calm, you need to understand that trust isn't given lightly in my world. And right now, you've broken it. She wanted to protest, but Dominic's gaze was like a physical weight pressing down on her, and she found herself nodding instead. I didn't mean to, sir. I swear, it wasn't what it looked like, she whispered, her voice trembling. He leaned back in his chair, steepling his fingers, and for the first time, he seemed thoughtful rather than angry. Not what it looked like, he repeated, his tone dangerous, a razor's edge beneath the calm. Amelia, in my life, appearances can be deadly. Secrets, or lethal. Her heart pounded as she tried to explain, fumbling over words she barely understood herself. It's just, I have people checking on me sometimes. Friends. I didn't think it mattered. I didn't think, her voice trailed off, and Dominic's gaze bore into her like fire. He stood abruptly, the chair scraping against the marble floor, and Amelia flinched. Dominic was taller than she remembered, and when he moved, it was with the precision of a predator, every motion controlled, deliberate. He stopped just inches from her, the scent of his cologne sharp and intoxicating, making her head spin. You didn't think, he repeated, almost a growl. Amelia, in this world, thinking isn't enough. You survive by knowing, by controlling, by being untouchable, and right now, you've shown me you're vulnerable. Amelia shivered, though not entirely from fear. There was something in the way he looked at her, intense and consuming, that made her blood rush in ways she didn't want to admit. I'm careful, sir. I promise. I would never, she hesitated, the words caught in her throat. Dominic's eyes softened for just a moment, a fleeting glimpse of something human beneath the ruthless exterior. I know you would try, he said quietly. But trying isn't enough. He circled her slowly, as if inspecting her, and Amelia felt every movement acutely, her pulse echoing in her ears. Dominic's presence was overwhelming, magnetic, and terrifying all at once. She wanted to look away, to run, but her body betrayed her, rooted in place. You must understand, he continued, his voice low, almost a whisper, this is bigger than you, bigger than me. Secrets have consequences, and in my world, consequences are not forgiving. Amelia nodded, swallowing hard. She had grown up hearing stories about Dominic Rinaldi, the Mafia boss who controlled half of New York's underground. Stories of men and women who disappeared without a trace, of power so absolute it bent reality itself. And now she was standing in front of him, her most private communications laid bare, feeling like prey under the gaze of a lion. Yet beneath the fear, there was something else, an undeniable pull she couldn't ignore. Dominic had always been fascinating, impossible, and terrifying, and now she was closer than ever to seeing the man behind the legend. Dominic leaned closer, his breath brushing against her ear, and Amelia felt her knees weaken. You need to prove to me, he murmured, his voice a mix of challenge and command, that you are loyal. That you are mine, in every sense of the word. Her heart skipped a beat. His words were not threats, they were orders. And somehow, that made the danger even more intense. She had always admired his control, his dominance, and now she was caught in the center of it, unsure whether to run or surrender. I'll do whatever it takes, she whispered, the words escaping before she could second-guess them. Dominic pulled back slightly, studying her, his expression unreadable. Then, without warning, he picked up the phone again, scrolling through the messages one more time. There's someone sending you warnings, he said, eyes narrowing. Who are they? How much do they know? Amelia shook her head frantically. I don't know. I've never met them in person. They send messages sometimes. I didn't think they were important. Her voice cracked, desperation mixing with the lingering thrill of being so close to him. Dominic's jaw tightened, and for a moment, Amelia thought she saw the flicker of rage that had made him feared by so many. You don't understand, he said, voice low, dangerous. In my world, there are no coincidences. Every message, every whisper, every secret, someone is watching. Someone is waiting. And now, someone knows more than I like. He paused, and Amelia felt her stomach drop. She had glimpsed the storm behind his calm exterior before, but now it was palpable, coiling around them, threatening to break loose. I need to protect you, and I need to protect what's mine, he continued, softer this time, almost intimate. Her pulse raced. Protect her. She barely understood the words, but something in them reached deep into her chest. Dominic Rinaldi, the man whose reputation could crumble cities and lives, was showing her a side few had ever seen. And as terrifying as that was, it also made her feel alive in ways she had never experienced. The phone buzzed again, a sharp reminder that the danger wasn't over. Dominic glanced at it, then back at her, his expression unreadable. This is bigger than both of us, he said finally. And now, we need to act. He picked up the phone, his fingers firm and decisive, and Amelia realized with a mixture of fear and anticipation that her life, her secrets, and her feelings for him were about to become entwined in ways she couldn't imagine. As Dominic stepped away, the tension in the room didn't ease. Amelia exhaled slowly, trying to calm the storm inside her. She knew one thing with certainty: from this moment on, nothing would ever be the same. Her world had shifted on its axis, and she was trapped between danger and desire, between loyalty and fear, with Dominic Rinaldi holding the key to everything. And somehow, deep down, she knew she couldn't turn back, even if she wanted to. Amelia couldn't shake the tension that had settled over the office like a heavy fog. Dominic had returned to his desk, but his presence lingered in every corner of the room, as though the shadows themselves were aware of him. Her phone still buzzed on the desk, the unknown number sending another ominous message: "They're closer than you think." She swallowed hard, the words making her stomach twist. Her life had always been complicated, but now it felt like she had stepped into a storm she didn't understand. Dominic's voice cut through the silence, low and commanding. "Show me the messages," he said, gesturing toward her phone. Amelia hesitated, the fear that had lodged itself in her chest making her fingers shake. But she knew resistance was futile. Dominic's control was absolute, and she was painfully aware of just how easily he could unravel her life with a single word. Slowly, she handed the phone over, watching as his eyes darkened with each scroll. He didn't react immediately, simply observing, calculating, as if weighing every possibility. Finally, he spoke. "These messages, they're not innocent. Someone is testing the boundaries, probing for weakness." He looked up at her, and Amelia felt a shiver run down her spine. "Do you know who?" she asked, her voice barely audible. Dominic's expression remained unreadable. "No," he admitted, almost reluctantly. "But I will find out. And when I do, whoever it is will regret it." The weight of his words pressed down on her like a physical force. Dominic Rinaldi didn't make empty threats. Every rumor, every story she had ever heard about him, came rushing back in a wave of fear and awe. He was a man who controlled everything around him, whose reputation alone could crumble empires. And now, for reasons she didn't fully understand, he had chosen to protect her. Amelia's mind raced. Why her? Why did Dominic care about these messages, about her safety? She had worked for him for months, always professional, always careful to stay in her lane. Yet here she was, standing in the eye of a storm, her heart hammering in ways she didn't expect. Dominic's gaze lingered on her, sharp and penetrating, and she realized she was holding her breath. He was dangerous, yes, but there was something magnetic about him, something that pulled at her with an intensity she couldn't resist. Breaking the silence, Dominic leaned back, his chair creaking under the weight of his movements. "You need to be honest with me," he said, his voice softer now, almost intimate. "Every detail, Amelia. No more secrets." She nodded, knowing that any hesitation could mean disaster. I've been careful, sir. I've never shared anything important with anyone. These messages, I don't know who they are from. They just started appearing recently, and I didn't think much of them at first." Dominic's eyes narrowed, dark and calculating. "You didn't think much of them," he repeated, disbelief coloring his tone. "Amelia, in my world, not thinking is a luxury no one can afford. Every word, every action, every misstep has consequences. You've been lucky, so far." The words made her shiver. Lucky. She realized just how fragile her position had been, how easily a careless moment could have unraveled everything she had worked for. He stood abruptly, moving toward the window, the city lights casting shadows across his face. I don't like being caught off guard, he said quietly, more to himself than to her. I don't like the unknown. And right now, there's too much I don't know. He turned, his gaze locking onto hers, piercing and unyielding. But that changes tonight. I'm going to find out who's behind this. And when I do, nothing will stop me from making them pay. Amelia felt a shiver of fear and something else, something dangerous, curl through her. Dominic Rinaldi was not a man to be trifled with. The very air seemed to hum with his presence, as though reality itself acknowledged his power. And yet, beneath the fear, there was a thrill she couldn't deny. Every glance, every word from him was like walking on the edge of a knife, terrifying, exhilarating, impossible to ignore. The phone buzzed again, snapping her out of her thoughts. Another message: stop trusting him. He's not what he seems. Amelia's eyes widened. The words were chilling, but Dominic's reaction was even more striking. He snatched the phone from the desk, his hand gripping it like a weapon. Who sent this? He demanded, his voice cold and lethal. Amelia shook her head, unable to answer. She didn't know, and she feared the truth might not matter. Dominic's wrath was always swift, always precise. He tossed the phone onto the desk, the clatter echoing in the office. If anyone dares threaten you, or me, they will regret it, he said, his tone final, unyielding. Then, unexpectedly, he stepped closer, his face inches from hers. Amelia's breath caught. There was a magnetic pull in his presence, a dangerous intensity that made her pulse race. And you, he whispered, need to be careful. Trust is earned in my world, Amelia. And right now, I don't know if I can fully trust you. Her chest tightened. Trust. Could she ever earn his trust? She had done everything by the book, followed every rule, stayed loyal in ways most people couldn't imagine. And yet here she was, standing in front of a man who could destroy her with a single thought, and feeling the weight of his doubt like a physical blow. She wanted to explain, to argue, to tell him that she was loyal, but the words felt insignificant, fragile against the intensity of his presence. Dominic studied her for a long moment, the tension between them palpable. Then, without warning, he reached out, brushing a stray strand of hair from her face. The gesture was gentle, intimate, and it made Amelia's heart skip. She hadn't expected it, and the sudden closeness made her acutely aware of every detail about him, the sharpness of his jaw, the intensity of his eyes, the commanding aura that seemed to bend the room around him. I don't like being surprised, he murmured, his voice low, almost a purr. But, I don't hate it either. The words sent a jolt through her, confusing and thrilling all at once. She couldn't decipher the meaning, the intent, and the danger of it all made her pulse race faster. Dominic Rinaldi was a man of power, of control, of danger, and yet, in this moment, he was showing her a vulnerability she hadn't seen before. Amelia's mind spun. The messages, the unknown threat, Dominic's intensity, it was too much, too fast. And yet, she couldn't look away, couldn't escape the magnetic pull between them. She realized, with a mixture of fear and desire, that her life was changing in ways she didn't fully understand. She was caught between danger and desire, between secrets and loyalty, and the man standing before her held the power to determine the outcome of both. Dominic finally stepped back, the intensity in his eyes dimming slightly, though the storm within him was far from over. We'll handle this, he said, voice steady, controlled. Together. But understand this, Amelia, trust is fragile. And in my world, even the smallest crack can shatter everything. Amelia nodded, swallowing hard. She understood the stakes. She understood the danger. And she understood, more than ever, that her life, and her heart, were now inextricably tied to Dominic Rinaldi. The night outside the office was alive with the distant hum of traffic and the occasional siren, but inside, the air felt charged, almost electric. Amelia sat at her desk, her fingers still trembling. Slightly as she stared at the phone, now lying face down on the polished surface. The messages from the unknown number had stopped for the moment, but their threat lingered like a shadow over the room. Dominic had left briefly to handle a business matter, though she knew his absence was only temporary. Every second without him nearby made her feel exposed, like the calm before a storm she couldn't anticipate. She tried to focus on her work, but her mind kept replaying the moments from earlier, the way Dominic had leaned close, the intensity in his eyes, the unspoken command that had made her heart race. There was danger in every aspect of her life now, but there was also something thrilling, a pull she couldn't resist no matter how much she wanted to. She knew she was walking a tightrope. One wrong step could lead to disaster, but part of her wondered if the risk was worth it. Her thoughts were interrupted by the soft click of the door, and she looked up to see Dominic returning. His expression was unreadable, his dark eyes scanning the office until they landed on her. "Have you heard anything new?" he asked, his voice calm but carrying that unmistakable edge of authority that always made her sit a little straighter. Amelia shook her head. "No, sir. Nothing since the last message." Dominic stepped closer, his presence dominating the room as always. "Good," he said, though his tone didn't match the word. He didn't sit this time. Instead, he leaned against the edge of the desk, studying her with an intensity that made her pulse spike. "But that doesn't mean the threat is gone. Whoever is behind this, they're patient. They're calculating. And they're dangerous." Amelia swallowed hard. "Do you think it's someone I know?" she asked quietly, the fear in her voice betraying her. Dominic shook his head slowly. "I don't know yet. That's why we need to be vigilant. I need you to stay alert at all times. No distractions, no mistakes." The command was clear, absolute, and though she wanted to argue, she knew better. Dominic Rinaldi did not tolerate defiance lightly. He picked up her phone again, scrolling through the messages once more, his jaw tight. Amelia watched him, a strange mixture of fear and fascination twisting inside her. There was a magnetic quality to him, a danger that was almost intoxicating. She had worked for powerful men before, but Dominic was different. He wasn't just powerful, he was unpredictable, commanding, and terrifyingly close to untouchable. And yet, for reasons she couldn't understand, he seemed determined to protect her, even if it meant putting himself at risk. The phone buzzed suddenly, and Amelia jumped. Dominic snatched it up instinctively, his hand firm and unyielding. The message was short, almost cryptic: "You can't hide the truth forever." Dominic's eyes narrowed, the familiar shadow of danger crossing his features. "They're getting bolder," he said, his voice low and dangerous. "Amelia, if they're willing to send messages like this, it means they're watching more than just your phone. They're watching you." Her stomach twisted. "What should I do?" she asked, fear and desperation creeping into her tone. Dominic's gaze softened just slightly, though the edge never left his voice. "You do exactly what I say. Stay close, stay alert, and most importantly, don't trust anyone outside this room. Not now, not ever." The weight of his words settled over her like a physical force. She nodded, knowing that obedience was her only option, though a part of her resented the fear that gripped her. Dominic moved around the desk, pacing slightly as he formulated his plan. "I'll handle the source," he said finally. "I'll find out who's behind this, and they won't see me coming. But until then, you're under my protection. You understand?" Amelia nodded again, the gravity of the situation pressing down on her. She did understand. In Dominic's world, protection wasn't given lightly, and being under it meant both safety and obligation. The tension in the room shifted slightly as Dominic stopped pacing and leaned against the desk again, this time closer to her than before. Amelia could feel the heat radiating from him, could sense the power in every movement, every word. It was terrifying and exhilarating at the same time, a mix of fear and desire that made it impossible to think clearly. "You're in danger," he said quietly, almost a whisper, "but you're also special. Don't forget that, Amelia." Her breath caught. Special. She didn't understand fully what he meant, but the implication sent a thrill through her chest. Dominic Rinaldi, the man who controlled half the city's underground, was paying attention to her in a way that no one else ever had. It was dangerous, yes, but it was also intoxicating, a pull she couldn't resist even if she tried. The office was silent for a moment, save for the hum of the city outside and the soft ticking of the clock on the wall. Amelia tried to focus on her breathing, on calming the storm inside her, but it was impossible. Every glance from Dominic, every word, every subtle movement was a reminder of just how close danger and desire were intertwined in her life now. Suddenly, the phone buzzed again, breaking the fragile calm. Dominic's hand shot out before she could react, his grip firm on the device. The message was chilling. She trusts too much. He will regret it. Dominic's eyes narrowed, a storm brewing behind them. This isn't just a threat, he muttered, more to himself than to her. This is a challenge. They want to see how far they can push us. Amelia's heart raced. She didn't fully understand the depth of Dominic's world, the enemies he had, the dangers that lurked in every corner. But she knew enough to realize that this was bigger than both of them, and the unknown adversary was playing a dangerous game. Dominic set the phone down, his jaw tight, his eyes dark. "I'll handle them," he said finally, his voice cold, decisive. "But you, stay close. No mistakes. No distractions. Do you understand?" Amelia nodded, every nerve in her body alert. She understood perfectly. Mistakes weren't an option in Dominic's world, and disobedience could mean death. For a moment, the room was silent again, the tension thick and suffocating. Amelia realized, with a mixture of fear and reluctant excitement, that her life had changed forever. The danger was real, the stakes higher than she had ever imagined, and Dominic Rinaldi was inescapably a part of it all. And then, as if sensing her thoughts, Dominic stepped closer, his presence overwhelming. "We'll get through this," he said, his voice low, almost intimate. "But you need to trust me, even if you don't fully understand why yet." Amelia met his gaze, feeling the pull between fear, loyalty, and something far more personal, something that made her heart race in ways she couldn't control. She nodded, knowing that from this moment on, nothing would ever be the same. The unknown threat still lurked, the messages still haunted her phone, but for the first time, she felt a strange sense of reassurance. Dominic Rinaldi, dangerous and unpredictable as he was, had chosen to protect her. And somehow, deep down, she knew that whatever came next, whatever challenges, betrayals, or revelations awaited, they would face it together. The morning light filtered through the blinds, casting narrow stripes across the office floor, but it did little to ease the tension in the room. Amelia had barely slept, her mind replaying the events of the previous night in a relentless loop. Every glance from Dominic, every word, every subtle shift in his expression haunted her. And the messages, they hadn't stopped. They were becoming more frequent now, more urgent, as if the unknown sender knew exactly when to strike to keep her on edge. She stared at the phone, the vibration buzzing in her hand like a warning signal. Each message made her pulse spike, each one a reminder that the danger was not only real, it was imminent. Dominic arrived earlier than usual, his presence announced not by sound but by the shift in the air. Amelia felt it before she even looked up, the unmistakable dominance, the magnetic tension that seemed to radiate from him like heat. He didn't speak at first, just surveyed the office, the city beyond, and finally, his gaze landed on her. "Show me," he said, his voice low, commanding. Amelia handed him the phone, her fingers trembling slightly. She didn't need to explain. Dominic already understood, and his dark eyes scanned every message, every line, every hint of the unknown. "They're escalating," he muttered, more to himself than to her. "They're testing boundaries, watching reactions, seeing how far they can push." His jaw tightened, a subtle but undeniable sign of his growing anger. Amelia's heart raced. She had never seen Dominic lose control, but the shadow of his fury was tangible, almost suffocating. She tried to look calm, tried to appear composed, but her pulse betrayed her. She knew better than to underestimate him, or the threat that now loomed over them both. Dominic set the phone down abruptly, the sound echoing through the room. "You will not respond to them," he said, his tone leaving no room for argument. "Not now, not ever. Any contact, any hint of communication, and there will be consequences." Amelia nodded, swallowing hard. She knew the weight of his words. In Dominic's world, even the smallest misstep could be catastrophic. And yet, the fear he inspired was tangled with a pull she couldn't resist. His power was intoxicating, overwhelming, a force that drew her closer even as it terrified her. He moved around the office with a predator's grace, pacing slowly as he formulated his next steps. "We need to find the source," he said finally, his eyes locking onto hers with that unrelenting intensity. "Someone is playing a dangerous game. And I don't like games. Not with my people. Not with you." The word sent a shiver through her, equal parts fear and something far more complicated, something she wasn't ready to name. She had never been this close to someone so dangerous, yet so undeniably captivating. Amelia tried to focus, tried to compartmentalize her fear, but the tension was relentless. The phone buzzed again, breaking her concentration. Dominic snatched it up instantly, his hand firm, unwavering. The message was short, menacing, deliberate: "He can't protect you forever." Dominic's eyes darkened, a storm brewing behind them, and for the first time, Amelia felt the true depth of his anger. "They think they can intimidate us," he said, voice low, controlled, yet laced with fury. "They think they understand the rules. They don't. And they will learn." He turned to her, the intensity of his gaze making her knees weak. "Amelia, from this point forward, nothing is just about you or me. Every move we make, every decision, every breath we take is under scrutiny. You need to trust me completely. Can you do that?" Amelia nodded, though her throat was tight. "Yes, sir," she whispered. The words felt small, almost inadequate, but they were all she could manage in the face of the power emanating from him. Dominic stepped closer, his presence overwhelming, the air around him almost electric. "Good," he murmured, "because trust is the only weapon we have right now. Against them, and against the chaos that's coming." Amelia felt a jolt run through her. Chaos. The word alone was terrifying, but Dominic spoke it with a certainty, a control, that made her heart race even faster. She realized, with a mixture of fear and reluctant excitement, that her life had irrevocably changed. The messages continued to come, and Dominic's focus never wavered. Each one was analyzed, each potential threat evaluated, every detail scrutinized. Amelia watched him work, fascinated despite her fear. He was brilliant, calculating, ruthless, but there was also a side of him she hadn't seen before, a protective streak aimed at her, a willingness to confront danger head-on that both terrified and thrilled her. The combination of danger and closeness was intoxicating, a magnetic pull she couldn't resist. Hours passed in a tense rhythm of analysis, planning, and silent communication. Dominic rarely spoke unnecessarily, but every word he did choose carried weight, command, and authority. Amelia found herself drawn to him in ways that confused her. She knew she shouldn't feel this way, not in a world of threats, power struggles, and potential betrayal, but she couldn't deny the pull. It was dangerous, intoxicating, and inevitable. As the day wore on, the office grew quieter, the messages less frequent for the moment. Dominic finally leaned back in his chair, his expression unreadable. "Rest," he said, his voice calm but carrying that unmistakable edge of authority. "You'll need your strength. Tomorrow, we take action." Amelia nodded, grateful for the brief respite, yet unable to shake the tension that still gripped her. The danger was far from over, and she knew it. But even in the midst of fear, there was a thrill, a spark of something she couldn't name, something that tied her to Dominic in a way she hadn't anticipated. The danger, the proximity, the intensity, it was all part of a world she had never imagined, a world where trust, loyalty, and survival were intertwined, and where every decision could change everything. Amelia left the office later that evening, her steps cautious, her mind racing. She knew the messages weren't finished, that the threat was still out there, watching, waiting, calculating. And yet, she also knew that Dominic would be ready. That knowledge gave her a strange, fragile sense of comfort in the midst of the chaos. As she walked through the city streets, the neon lights reflecting off wet pavement, she couldn't help but think about Dominic, about his intensity, his power, and the inexplicable way he seemed to pull her in. She was terrified, exhilarated, and utterly captivated. And she knew, without a doubt, that nothing would ever be the same again. The messages would continue. The threats would grow bolder. But Amelia understood now that she was no longer just a bystander. She was part of Dominic's world, entwined with him in ways she couldn't fully comprehend. And in that knowledge, terrifying as it was, there was a strange, undeniable thrill. The next morning, the city seemed quieter, almost eerily so, as though the streets themselves were holding their breath. Amelia arrived at the office earlier than usual, her steps measured, every sense alert. Her phone lay in her bag, silent for the moment, but the tension it carried remained in the pit of her stomach. She knew the unknown sender had not given up. They were waiting, watching, testing her and Dominic, seeing how far they could push. Every instinct screamed at her to be cautious, but there was no turning back. Her life had become irrevocably intertwined with Dominic's, and that reality came with both protection and peril. Dominic arrived shortly after, moving through the office with the confidence and dominance she had come to expect. There was no need for words initially. The energy in the room shifted the moment he entered, heavy and magnetic. He didn't sit this time, instead walking directly to her, eyes dark and unreadable. "You've done well to come in early," he said, his voice low and controlled. "We don't have much time." Amelia nodded, swallowing hard. Every interaction with him was charged, a delicate balance of fear, respect, and a pull she couldn't resist. He gestured to the phone on her desk. "The messages started again overnight," he said, picking it up with precision. The latest one glared at him. "He's blind to the truth." "She will pay." Dominic's jaw tightened. His eyes, normally unreadable, flickered with a dangerous intensity. "This isn't just a game," he muttered. "They're escalating. They're ready to act, and now, it's no longer a test." Amelia felt a chill run down her spine. The cryptic nature of the message was frightening enough, but the implication that action was imminent made her pulse spike. Dominic's eyes met hers, sharp and commanding. "From this point on, you follow my lead without question. Do you understand?" Amelia nodded, heart pounding. "Yes, sir." His gaze softened for just a fraction of a second, a brief glimpse of the man beneath the ruthless exterior. "Good," he said, then turned his attention back to the phone. "We need to prepare. Whoever is behind this, they don't know what they're up against." Hours passed in tense silence, broken only by Dominic's meticulous planning and the occasional buzz of the phone. Amelia watched him, fascinated despite herself. He was precise, calculating, yet there was a raw intensity in his focus that made every movement magnetic. The way he analyzed the messages, anticipated potential threats, and formulated strategies made it clear why he commanded such fear and respect in his world. And yet, amid the danger, there was a strange comfort in being near him, in knowing that his attention was fixed on her safety, even as he plotted against unseen enemies. By midday, the first move of the unknown sender became apparent. A delivery arrived for Amelia, a simple package with no return address. Her hands trembled as she unwrapped it, revealing a folder of photographs, images of her apartment, her route to work, even shots of her leaving the office. Her breath caught in her throat. The sender was closer than they had indicated, watching her every move, and the reality of the danger struck with full force. Dominic appeared behind her without warning, his hand gripping her shoulder, anchoring her. "They've crossed a line," he said, his voice low, dangerous. Amelia felt the magnetic pull of his presence, both terrifying and thrilling. "Do you understand what this means?" he continued. "This isn't just about messages anymore. They're taking action. They're trying to intimidate you, to lure you into a mistake. And we can't allow that." Dominic's mind was already moving, plotting a countermeasure. "We'll find out who this is, and we'll ensure they regret it," he promised, the intensity in his eyes making Amelia's pulse race. She wanted to argue, to suggest caution, but she knew better. Dominic's methods were precise, ruthless, and effective. Resistance wasn't an option. The only way forward was to trust him completely, despite the fear twisting in her chest. As the afternoon wore on, Dominic orchestrated a series of moves to flush out the sender. Surveillance footage was reviewed, phone records traced, and contacts questioned. Amelia followed his lead, assisting where she could, but mostly absorbing the sheer force of his presence. Every glance he cast, every command he gave, was a reminder of the power he wielded, and the magnetic danger he represented. She felt herself drawn closer to him, despite the fear and chaos, caught in a web of tension that was impossible to ignore. The first real confrontation came as the sun dipped below the skyline, casting long shadows across the city. Dominic had identified a likely location where the sender might be operating from, a small, nondescript building in a less traveled part of the city. He briefed Amelia quickly. "Stay behind me. Follow instructions exactly. No deviations." She nodded, heart racing. She had never been on the front lines of anything like this, yet the trust she placed in Dominic was absolute. They moved through the streets with calculated precision, Dominic's hand occasionally brushing against hers in subtle guidance. Every sound, every shadow, every movement felt amplified. Amelia's pulse pounded not only from fear but from the tension of being so close to him, of moving through danger side by side. She realized she had never felt more alive, or more aware of the fragility of life and the intensity of her attraction to him. Reaching the building, Dominic signaled her to stay back while he scoped the entrance. Moments later, he returned, expression unreadable but eyes sharp. "They're inside. I need you to stay here," he said. Amelia nodded, though part of her wanted to insist on going with him. Dominic's eyes softened just slightly, a fleeting connection that made her stomach twist. "Trust me," he murmured, almost to himself. And she did. Minutes later, the first confrontation began. Shouts, movements, the clash of wills, it was chaotic and precise all at once. Dominic moved like a shadow, swift and controlled, neutralizing threats with lethal efficiency. Amelia watched from the shadows, her breath caught between fear and admiration. The man she had feared, the man she had come to respect and be drawn to, was unstoppable, a force of nature in motion. And in that moment, she understood why he commanded the loyalty, the fear, and the respect that he did. When it was over, Dominic returned to her side, the storm of action giving way to a tense quiet. "It's done," he said, voice low, controlled, though the adrenaline in his eyes still burned. Amelia exhaled, relief and awe mingling in her chest. Are you okay?" she asked, her voice barely audible. He looked at her, the intensity in his gaze softening for a fleeting moment. "I am now," he said. "But this isn't over. Not yet. They'll try again. And next time," he didn't finish the sentence, but she understood. The danger was far from over. As they returned to the office, Amelia felt the weight of the day settle over her. Fear, excitement, tension, and attraction were all tangled together in ways she couldn't fully comprehend. Dominic had protected her, yet the world outside still loomed with threats. And despite everything, the danger, the intensity, the unknown, she couldn't deny the magnetic pull she felt toward him. He was dangerous, unpredictable, and terrifying, but he was also the only anchor she had in this storm. The night was heavy, thick with the scent of rain and asphalt, when Dominic returned to the office after ensuring the immediate threat had been neutralized. Amelia had stayed behind, her nerves taut, every shadow and sound magnified by the adrenaline still coursing through her. Even with the danger momentarily contained, the tension in the room was palpable. She watched him enter, his presence commanding, magnetic, as though the darkness itself bowed to him. There was no relief in her chest, only the sharp reminder that this was far from over, and that she was now irrevocably caught in his world. Dominic moved directly toward her, the intensity in his eyes making her pulse race. "They won't stop," he said quietly, almost a growl. "Not until they know every secret, until they understand what they're up against. And right now, they've underestimated me." His words carried that dangerous edge, the one she had come to fear and crave in equal measure. Amelia felt her knees weaken slightly at the proximity, at the sheer force of his presence. She wanted to step back, but every instinct to flee was overpowered by the magnetism in his gaze. He picked up the phone again, reviewing the latest message. "She trusts too much. He will fail." Dominic's jaw tightened, the lines of his face hardening with a mix of fury and determination. "They think they can manipulate us, that they can play with me," he muttered, voice low, controlled, yet carrying an undeniable threat. "They're wrong. Dead wrong." Amelia swallowed hard, her hands gripping the edge of the desk as she tried to steady herself. The danger was real, immediate, but Dominic's command over it was absolute. It was both terrifying and intoxicating to witness. He circled her slowly, each step deliberate, like a predator assessing the terrain. "You've been through a lot," he said finally, his tone softer, almost intimate, though the edge of danger never left his voice. "But I need you to understand something, this isn't just about survival. It's about control, about trust. And right now, I need you to trust me completely." Amelia nodded, though her chest was tight with a mix of fear and something else, something she wasn't ready to name. I do, she whispered, her voice barely audible. Dominic's gaze softened slightly, and for a fleeting moment, the walls he always carried around him seemed to crack. Good, he said. Because trust, that's the only weapon we have against them. And it's fragile. One misstep, one hesitation, and everything falls apart. He leaned closer, the proximity making Amelia's heart hammer in her chest. And I can't protect you if you hesitate. Understand? She nodded again, swallowing the lump in her throat. Every word, every glance from him carried weight, command, and the unmistakable pull of danger and desire. The phone buzzed again, the message this time more direct: he can't save you. She belongs to us now. Amelia's breath caught, fear and adrenaline spiking in tandem. Dominic snatched the phone, his dark eyes scanning the words with lethal focus. The storm behind his gaze was palpable, an almost tangible aura of danger radiating from him. They're bold now, he muttered, his voice low, deadly. They want to see if they can intimidate us, to test my limits. They're playing with fire. Amelia felt a shiver run down her spine. The threat had crossed into something deeply personal, something that made the danger immediate and undeniable. But Dominic's presence, his control, his focus, his determination, was a grounding force, one that kept her from succumbing to panic. Even in the face of fear, she felt drawn to him, captivated by the power he exuded. It was intoxicating, and terrifying. He moved back toward the desk, sitting down and leaning forward, hands clasped tightly. We need to strike preemptively, he said, his voice cold, methodical. If they think they can corner us, they're mistaken. Amelia, this is no longer about messages. They're making their move, and we have to anticipate it before it's too late. Her stomach tightened, knowing that the stakes had escalated far beyond what she had imagined. Hours passed in tense planning and surveillance. Dominic's mind was a machine of precision, anticipating every possible scenario, calculating every risk. Amelia assisted where she could, but mostly she absorbed, learned, and tried to keep pace with him. The closeness between them was undeniable, subtle touches and shared glances electrifying the already charged atmosphere. She felt a dangerous pull toward him, a connection that blurred the lines between fear and something far more personal. Finally, around midnight, the first indication of the sender's next move appeared. Dominic's phone buzzed with an alert, signaling unusual activity at one of the locations they had been monitoring. Without hesitation, he stood, moving toward the door with a predator's grace. Amelia followed instinctively, heart pounding, knowing that disobedience wasn't an option. Every step she took behind him reminded her of the magnetic danger he represented, the power he wielded, and the unspoken connection that bound them. They arrived at the location, a darkened warehouse on the outskirts of the city. Dominic signaled for her to stay back while he scoped the perimeter. Amelia watched him, captivated by the lethal precision of his movements, the intensity of his focus. He returned moments later, expression unreadable, and whispered, "They're inside. Follow exactly as I instruct. No mistakes." She nodded, aware that the next few hours could change everything. Inside the warehouse, the tension was suffocating. Shadows moved in the corners, and every sound echoed ominously. Dominic led with absolute control, neutralizing threats with precision and efficiency. Amelia stayed close, aware of every movement, every command, every shift in his posture. She realized, with a mixture of fear and exhilaration, that she had never been this close to someone so dangerous, and yet she had never felt safer. The confrontation was swift but intense. Dominic's presence dominated the space, his focus unwavering, his strategy flawless. Amelia observed, heart racing, as he neutralized the adversaries, his every movement precise and deadly. She had never imagined she would witness such raw power, such unyielding control. And yet, amid the chaos, there was a strange intimacy, a connection that pulled her closer despite the danger. When the last threat was neutralized, Dominic turned to her, eyes dark and stormy. "Are you unharmed?" he asked, voice low, almost protective. Amelia nodded, her chest still heaving. "Yes," she whispered, unable to hide the mix of fear and admiration in her tone. He studied her for a moment, the storm behind his gaze softening just slightly. "Good," he said, then leaned closer, a dangerous intensity in his presence. But understand this, we're not done. This is just the beginning. Amelia realized, in that moment, that her life had changed irrevocably. The danger was real, the stakes higher than she had ever imagined, and Dominic Rinaldi, dangerous, magnetic, unpredictable, was at the center of it all. And despite the fear, despite the chaos, she couldn't deny the pull, the thrill, the connection that bound her to him in ways she didn't yet understand. The dawn broke over the city, pale light filtering through the blinds, but the office was still charged with the remnants of the night's tension. Amelia sat at her desk, the exhaustion of adrenaline and sleepless hours weighing heavily on her. Her phone lay silent for the moment, but the threat, the invisible, relentless presence of the unknown sender, had not disappeared. Dominic stood by the window, gaze fixed on the skyline, a shadowed figure of power and intensity, as if the city itself bent to his will. He had neutralized the immediate danger at the warehouse, but he knew, as did Amelia, that the battle was far from over. He turned suddenly, eyes locking onto hers with that piercing intensity that made her heart race. "They'll make one final move," he said, his voice low, controlled, almost a growl. "And when they do, you must stay behind me. Trust me completely. No hesitation. Do you understand?" Amelia swallowed hard, the weight of the moment pressing on her. "Yes, sir," she whispered, voice trembling, though her resolve was firm. She understood now that in Dominic's world, survival depended on absolute trust and precision. The phone buzzed again, this time with a new message: the truth will be revealed. She will choose, and he will pay. Dominic snatched it up, eyes narrowing. "They're desperate," he muttered. "They want to provoke a reaction, to manipulate you, and by extension, me. But desperation makes people careless. And mistakes are fatal." Amelia felt a shiver run down her spine. The words weren't just a threat, they were a promise of the confrontation yet to come. Dominic moved with lethal precision, preparing for what he knew would be the final act. He gathered surveillance data, traced phone records, and set up a plan that left no room for error. Amelia followed his lead, assisting where she could, though mostly she observed, absorbing every detail of his command, his strategy, and the magnetic force that was Dominic Rinaldi. Every glance, every subtle touch, every whispered word held a tension that made her pulse hammer in ways she couldn't control. By evening, they had identified the sender's hideout, a secluded penthouse in the heart of the city, shadows of power and danger lurking in every corner. Dominic briefed Amelia quickly: "Stay close. Follow instructions exactly. This is the final confrontation. One mistake, and everything falls apart." She nodded, heart racing, knowing that nothing in her life had prepared her for this. Every nerve was on edge, yet beneath the fear, there was a thrill, a pull she couldn't deny. Dominic's presence was a magnetic force, dangerous and intoxicating, and she felt herself drawn closer despite the risks. They approached the penthouse cautiously, shadows stretching long across the city streets. Dominic's movements were precise, predatory, every step calculated, every gesture purposeful. Amelia followed, instinctively, heart pounding in her chest, aware that her life, and possibly more, hung on the outcome. The thrill of danger, combined with the closeness to Dominic, was overwhelming. She realized, with a mixture of fear and something far more complicated, that she had never been this alive, never felt this intensely vulnerable, yet protected at the same time. The penthouse was quiet, almost deceptively so. Dominic signaled for her to stay back while he scouted the entrance. Amelia held her breath, watching him move with the fluid precision of a predator. When he returned, expression unreadable but eyes sharp, he whispered, "They're expecting us." "But not expecting me." She nodded, knowing the weight of his words. The stakes were higher than ever, and the unknown sender had underestimated the man in front of her. Inside, the confrontation erupted with sudden violence. Shadows moved, figures lunged, but Dominic's control was absolute. He neutralized threats with lethal efficiency, every motion precise, calculated, deadly. Amelia stayed close, heart racing, following instructions, witnessing the power and intensity of the man who had become her protector, her anchor, and the center of her dangerous, thrilling world. Every strike, every move, every command he gave was a reminder of the lethal magnetism he carried, a force that both terrified and captivated her. Finally, the chaos subsided. The unknown sender lay exposed, their plan unraveling under Dominic's unyielding strategy. Amelia's chest heaved with relief, exhaustion, and a strange, thrilling sense of awe. Dominic turned to her, eyes dark, stormy, yet softening just slightly. "Are you unharmed?" he asked, voice low, protective. She nodded, unable to hide the mixture of fear, relief, and admiration swirling in her chest. The sender, realizing defeat, attempted one last desperate move, but Dominic was faster, sharper, in complete control. The final threat was neutralized with ruthless precision. Amelia watched, breathless, as the man who had terrified her, captivated her, and drawn her into a world of danger, now stood victorious. The city outside seemed to exhale along with her, the tension in the air finally easing, though the echoes of what had occurred lingered like a shadow. Dominic approached her slowly, his presence overwhelming, yet grounding. "It's done," he said, voice low, almost intimate. "The danger has passed, for now." Amelia felt a shiver run through her, the combination of fear, adrenaline, and attraction making her heart hammer. "Thank you," she whispered, knowing that words were insufficient to express the depth of her gratitude, the intensity of what she felt. He studied her for a moment, the storm behind his gaze softening, yet never completely gone. "This world, it's unforgiving," he murmured. "But you've proven yourself. Loyal, smart, courageous. And, surprisingly resilient." Amelia's cheeks flushed, the compliment, rare and genuine, hitting her with unexpected force. She had never imagined Dominic would see her in that way, respect her, even notice her in the midst of his dangerous, demanding life. For a long moment, they stood there, the chaos behind them, the city alive outside, and the silence between them charged with unspoken tension. Amelia realized, with a mixture of relief and anticipation, that she was irrevocably drawn to him, captivated not just by his power, but by the intensity of his presence, the sharpness of his mind, and the rare glimpses of the man beneath the legend. Dominic finally stepped closer, so close that she could feel the heat radiating from him. "There's something you need to understand," he said, voice low, almost a whisper. "In my world, loyalty isn't just about survival. It's about trust, about surrender, about knowing that someone has your back when everything else falls apart. And right now, you have mine." Amelia's breath caught. The words were dangerous, intoxicating, and thrilling all at once. She knew she had crossed into a world she couldn't leave, a world dominated by Dominic's presence, his power, and the intensity that now bound them together. She stepped closer, drawn by the magnetism that had defined their interactions since the beginning. "And you have mine," she whispered, the words barely audible but charged with meaning. Dominic's eyes darkened, a mixture of desire, respect, and something unspoken passing between them. The danger had passed, but the tension, the attraction, and the bond they had forged in the fire of threat and survival remained, stronger than either of them could have anticipated. The city continued its rhythm outside, oblivious to the storm that had raged in the penthouse, oblivious to the battles won and the dangers averted. Inside, Amelia and Dominic stood together, a quiet but undeniable connection linking them, forged in danger, tested by fear, and sealed by trust. They had survived the night, the threat, and the unknown, but more than that, they had discovered something far more potent, a bond neither expected, and a pull that neither could deny. As the dawn continued to break, washing the room in soft light, Dominic reached out, brushing a stray strand of hair from Amelia's face, the gesture intimate, protective, and undeniably personal. "This isn't over," he murmured, though there was a softness in his tone now, a rare vulnerability. Amelia nodded, understanding that in his world, there would always be danger, but that she was no longer facing it alone. She had Dominic by her side, and that made all the difference. And in that moment, amidst the aftermath of chaos, danger, and adrenaline, Amelia realized that her life had irrevocably changed. She was part of Dominic's world now, bound to him by trust, intensity, and something deeper than either of them had expected. The danger had shaped them, the threats had tested them, and through it all, a connection had been forged that neither could ignore.